Good evening, panel. Are the delayed drug consumption rooms merely another panic measure by the SNP to reduce their woeful record in drug deaths?
Thank you. This is the Safer Drugs Consumption Room, which was due to open less than a mile from here, actually, on Monday, delayed because of checks that have to take place on the building. David Duke, 1,172 Scots died from drugs last year, up 12% on the previous year. Yeah. Are safe consumption rooms a panic measure or a measured response to that, do you think?
I think the last time I was on this show actually was about a year ago, and we were discussing safe consumption rooms when Glasgow announced it was going to open the first one. And obviously it's still not open, and there's obviously delays and stuff that we don't know about, and things that happen and protocols that you need to take into account. But you know, if we're looking at treating the drug death crisis as a crisis and emergency, we need to act like it. You know, so yes, there's always delays and stuff, but we need to act faster. Now, in terms of solutions, you know, that's part of it. You know, I think Glasgow was very bold in taking it on, you know, and a lot of people...
First place in the UK to
First place in the UK. And for somebody sitting at home and maybe in the audience that maybe don't get it because, you know, they're maybe far away from it or don't understand it or don't know anyone who's been connected to or struggled with addiction. But there's, you know, those numbers that you read out, you know, are just horrifying. And behind those numbers, there's families, you know, there's children, there's cousins, there's sisters, there's brothers, all suffering because of we're not being able to get a grip of this crisis, you know, and the numbers will continue to go up because we actually don't know how many people are starting to take drugs either, you know, because whilst we don't know the numbers of who's taking drugs each year either, so there could be more people taking drugs year on year because of, you know, the effects of poverty or mental health or trauma, but we can't actually track that. So it could continue to go up, but we need to start to look further downstream and saying, right, what can we put in place? You know, why, you know, there's a real kind of rise in stimulants, for example, cocaine, benzos. Why is that? You know, we need to understand why that's happening and why there's more and more reliance on it and looking at solutions, you know, and the solution is investment, you know, and we need it. We need the investment in it, but it has to be an investment, but kind of done in the right way so that we don't miss anybody out. You know, there's examples of, you know, for example, if someone is lucky enough to get a rehabilitation space, you know, they maybe go for a 6-month rehab, 12-month. When they come out, there's a good chance they're getting into homeless accommodation. So actually what we need, and there is supported accommodation out there that, you know, that is of a good standard, but actually there's not enough. So when someone comes out of rehab and they're trying to, you know, reintegrate back into the community and find some recovery capital in their lives, they're getting placed back into homelessness where they can be even more at risk, you know. So we need to provide safe housing support solutions so that people can support the journey. And, you know, if you look at, I'm a big believer in recovery capital, which is things, you know, NA and CA and all these services that are largely run voluntary. It's not run by public services. It's people with lived experience who are in their communities, helping people, taking people along, supporting people on the journey, and that's what we need to support. Okay. Sorry.
Gentleman in the back row. Yes.
I think one of the additional benefits of this room is we expect people that are sort of abusing drugs and unfortunately dying from drugs, they have very chaotic lifestyles, and we expect them to conform to the health system that we have, and clearly that's not working. So one of the added benefits of this is a regular contact with health services that they could have, and we could bring the service to them and deal with the mental health crisis that's ongoing behind, deal with all the other health problems that are associated with drug use, and then hopefully turn around the number of drug deaths that we have.
Thank you. Fulk McGregor, you were a social worker before politics, so you know the issues behind all of this. I think there's a target of 1,000 rehab beds for the Scottish Government to introduce. Is this safe consumption room enough at this time to address the issue in Scotland?
I completely agree with David. It's part of a suite of measures that's required. And I think the gentleman's initial question was, is this a panic measure? I don't believe it is. I think it's actually been given a lot of thought, a lot of discussion. There's certainly been a lot of debate time given to it within the Scottish
And it's
the
used
Scottish
in other
Parliament.
countries as well.
Yes,
isn't
and it's used in other countries. And I think that actually what it does is it helps us to move the debate around drug use from the criminal justice sphere into a health sphere, and treating the people who are using drugs as individuals, and safe consumption rooms is very much in that vein, and I fully support it. But at the root of drug use, as I think it's already been touched on as well, is poverty. And poverty in this country through years of austerity and years of our industrial towns being ripped apart. This is the effects of it. This is the impact of it. And we need to find a suite of measures to deal with things like drug use, and certainly safe consumption rooms have their place. They're not a be-all and end-all. They're not going to fix the problem overnight. I don't think anybody would say that, but I think the sooner that we can get up and started with them and get them moving, the better.
Andy, you asked the question. What do you think?
To me, it's a completely panic measure. A lot of the general public seems to have this lovely notion about people getting into rehab, getting fixed, sorted, back onto the street, living normal lives. Nonsense. In my past working days, I worked with drug addicts and various other addicts every day of the week for many, many years. And talking to these guys, they're not going to go. They won't go to your drug consumption rooms. They're quite happy they're going to meet their dealers at the end of the street. The people that might go to the drug consumption rooms are your high-end drug users, like many of your dentists, doctors who are hooked in cocaine. These are the people who will go, not your everyday guys in the street that this gentleman here helps. That's my opinion.
So what do you think needs to happen?
They need to stop the source, the dealers. That's what needs to happen. They need to stop the dealers.
So this is a criminal justice issue.
This is a criminal justice issue, not a public health issue, or whatever the gentleman would like to call it.
Okay.
It's a criminal issue.
Okay, thank you. Annie Wells, you lost your best friend to drugs.
Yeah, and I see it every day looking out my window. I still live in Springburn, and I still see people who were maybe on drugs 30 years ago still walking by to go to the chemist to get their methadone. They're not actually getting any help or support. And I speak to people who have lost loved ones as well more recently. And the drug consumption facility, I think, as Fulton said, it's something that is part of something. But when I speak to people who have lost their children, they say, I didn't want him to be able to go somewhere to take drugs. I want him off drugs altogether. So I think you're a wee bit right. It is a panic measure. But as David said, we were sitting talking about this a year ago. This is another year's drug death statistics. It's been out as well since this was spoken about a year ago. So we've brought forward a right to recovery bill. It's been on the go for 3 years. It got published in June this year. It's 6 pages long. It enshrines in law each person's right to rehabilitation, whatever form that rehabilitation may be, and it won't be for everyone. But it's 6 pages long, and we've yet to get anyone from the SNP government or the Scottish Government to back that bill. And it's been written by frontline workers. It's been written by those in recovery. So yes, I think, as the gentleman said, you should be able to go and get help and support. I don't know if that's what people are wanting to go to these places for. I'd like to think it is something that would automatically happen. But I do think that we do need to stop the sale of drugs at source as well. There's criminal gangs out there making millions of pounds out of drugs. We're seeing hundreds of thousands of pounds getting recovered from properties in Glasgow almost every month. So we need to stop that as well. But we do need to make sure that we are putting in place something that allows those who want help in recovery to get it and be enshrined in law.
Okay. Down there. Yes.
I just wanted to pick up, sorry, on, I think the gentleman on the, I've forgotten his name.
Fulton.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Fulton, I apologise. You said that it was all to do with poverty. I'm sort of echoing a lot of the sentiments of what someone said about, clearly there's an oversimplification if it's just about poverty. There are those that obviously use drugs that perhaps have a different financial status or whatever. Clearly people get away with a lot more if they have that kind of absorption that comes from a privileged financial status. And you see it at universities and what he said about dentists and doctors and, of course, people in positions of privilege and power abusing them. It's very different, of course, if you're at the bottom of the housing market or, in lots more sort of complicated circumstances or whatever. And I don't know, personally, of course, I have been affected by some of that. And, I think for me, you talk about rehabilitation and whatever, Actually, from my perspective, I don't think it's actually possible, and this perhaps feeds into a completely separate debate, but I would rather that the Scottish Government gave people the right to take their own way, well, to be supported in navigating an exit strategy. In other words, if you had come to really, I can't really tolerate going on for much longer, given the damage that drugs have done to my life, and therefore I would want the Scottish Government to support me in, trying to get that ended, because I don't think, for some people, not for everyone, but for some people, clearly, it isn't going to get better, and it's a fallacy and a lie to suggest that it will. Once the damage is done, it is pretty inveterate, and certainly I know that from personal experience. And look, I grew up in Battlefield. I heard Battlefield getting talked about. I'm not from a difficult background. Someone's a social worker. My mum ran social work for Glasgow, but it has destroyed my life, obviously. And I honestly don't think that from my perspective, that can be changed by a lot of the primary addiction services.
Do you mind me asking a bit more about that? This is through family experience?
No, my mother didn't use drugs, sorry,
No.
but my mother died at the beginning of this year of a massive stroke. She was very senior in social work, and she had achieved quite a lot in her life. I was actually struck by, I know that was from the Commonwealth Games that we're talking about, but we made a huge contribution to the community. But when people, I think, lose something that's so important, because, look, that's what I'm saying, drugs affect everyone differently, and there's no one size fits all, but, when that damage is done, and that's on a community level as well as an individual level, then, all options should be on the table.
Okay.
And I say that sincerely.
Okay, thank you. Man on the front row down here.
I'd have to question the wisdom of attributing the increase in drug deaths to any political party. It's happened for decades. And we know it's not the cause of the SNP or Labour or the Tories. The second thing is, the reason why we're introducing this type of service in Glasgow is because there's clinical evidence that it works. That's why it's been successful in other cities in Europe. So therefore, why shouldn't we reflect and learn what's happened in these other cities in Europe? The third point that, David, you have made here is that when we're talking about harm reduction, and there's an assumption here we're all talking about IV drug use. That's actually not the major problem that we face in this city, because there is the use of benzodiazepines and amphetamines, which are part of people's lifestyles, and that's not just working class, and that's not just poverty. It exists in the west end of the city, and it exists in the south side of the city. So I think this notion that this is some kind of panic panacea, I would question the wisdom of that, but there is definitely clinical evidence to show that this type of measure works.
Thank you. And lady at the back. Yes, here you go.
So I think it's really important that we bring to the argument that nobody wakes up today and says, I'm going to become an addict today. It's something that happens really gradually and over time. And I think we've had some really great points from the other audience members, and I too have come from the East End. I very much grew up in one of the rougher areas where drug use was very much rife amongst my house, amongst all the other houses. What I think is missing, I think these rooms are great, but we need to have better early intervention. We need to have a more holistic approach, because it's not just about the drug user, it's about their families, it's about their children, it's about the community, and it's about the fact that it can spread so far and wide. So I think we need to stop a lot of the stigma, and I think that's kind of slowly happening. But again, just when nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to become an addict and I'm going to wreck my life today. But I do think we need to be looking at the bigger picture.
Okay, thank you. Joanna Baxter.
So I think the gentleman in the audience was correct. I mean, there is evidence to demonstrate that there can be positive impacts of these centres, but this is not, there is no one solution to this. This is a complex issue which is multifaceted, and unless you tackle all aspects of it, then you'll continue to experience the difficulties. Now, I think David was absolutely right that this is a national tragedy, and it should be dealt with as an emergency. My concern is that we haven't been getting the early interventions on some of the causes of drug deaths.
Like what?
Like poverty, like access to mental health supports. You know, I'm sure people here have tried to access their GP in recent years and struggled with that. Never mind complex services
These
through
issues,
the health
I mean,
service.
Labour dominated the west of Scotland for generations in terms of politics, and these
So-
issues go back that long.
So I'm not saying that they don't. I mean, we haven't been in government in the UK until July for the last 14 years, and we've not been in government in Scotland for 17 years. So, I mean, all that I'm saying is this needs constant work and effort and attention from all governments, actually. So it's right that we do see what the effects of the safe consumption rooms are, but putting all of our eggs in that basket would be to decry the very complex issues that surround this.
Gentleman in the glasses, down here. Yes.
Having spoken about early intervention there, that's me just recently out of secondary education within Scotland. And in the personal social education classes, I feel as if towards the end of my time at secondary school, the education within drug use and alcohol use and things sort of dropped off. So would we agree that education in certain aspects can also be a problem when that's a key element to the early intervention?
Yeah, Natasha.
Well, I'm Glasgow born and bred, and I can remember the excitement of going into the city centre with my friends when I was younger, and I can remember the jarring vision of seeing syringes in alleyways and being so confused by that because I was a young person, perhaps I hadn't received the education that was necessary, and as we know from these statistics, the problem has really only worsened over time. And I have to say, it just breaks my heart. And I totally agree with David, and I agree with so many points that have been made tonight. And that's because it's such a personal issue. You know, of course, everyone has an opinion. Of course, people have lost loved ones, etc., and it really affects your opinion. But I think it's something that has to be tried, the safe consumption room. You know, as David said, behind all of these addicts who've lost their lives are all these families. And to think, perhaps the gentleman who spoke earlier thinks it's a waste of money. Perhaps he thinks that I have a slightly rose-tinted view of it. But in my head, the idea of someone taking that step to go and consume whatever drug they're taking safely in the company of a medical professional, it's not going to be that first time the last time, but it could be the first time that they have a conversation with a medical professional who'll say, as they help them administer illegal drugs, how can we make this the last time that you do it? How can we make this a first step to you never coming back here again? And I just think it's worth a shot because these are the most vulnerable people in society.
Yeah, David, on you come.
I think when we're talking about addiction here as well. You know, but don't forget alcohol. You know, because a lot of addiction. So we talk about drugs. There's kind of two things happening just now. There's people who are using, or people who are, you know, using substances to mask some pain. So there's trauma and there's pain there, and it's something that came from, you know, adverse experience and stuff like that. And often that's why, you know, people use. I mean, I was homeless for 3 years in Glasgow, you know, and I drank every day because I was just trying to mask the pain of being stuck in a hostel, not too far from here every day and having nothing to look forward to. But then there's another side just now which is worrying as well, the fact that it's a trendy thing for young people and stuff like that, cocaine and all that. You know, it's, you know, people are holding down jobs and working on that, young people and all that. It's being seen as cool to, so it's a cultural thing now, and that's the worrying thing.
Because is that different from what you saw before?
It's becoming more and more popular. I'm obviously not a young person anymore, as you can clearly see, but I can see it, you know, speaking to peers and colleagues, and obviously we work across Scotland with different people. It's, you know, it's getting more and more popular. You know, whereas drugs when I was growing up was kind of frowned upon, you know, but now it's like it's the cool thing and stuff like that. And I think a lot of young people are getting caught up in it. And then what comes with that is real mental health issues. You know, because if you think of something like cocaine, it's like so unnatural high, right? But then how do you deal with that unnatural low? And I think that's where some of these kind of really worrying mental health statistics, particularly around young men, are coming from. But I think, and I always plead with people not to, you know, most of the time it's not choice. You know, under the recreational stuff, it starts with choice because it's like a cultural thing. But when someone's hooked and it takes over addiction, whether it be alcohol or drugs, you know, that's not choice. You know, you can't just switch it off. And I always try and plead with people not to judge people.
Okay.
You know, and actually think about the journey that person went on to end up in that place, as the lady in the back row said. They don't wake up wanting to do that.